Moving to the West Bank, and there's a related point to be made there. In that Ministry of Intelligence Ministry document that was leaked the other day, there was a piece that didn't get talked about much, but it proposed, one of the proposals was a complete cleansing of Gaza, pushing everyone into the Sinai Desert. Another of the proposals in there was, which they rejected, but said here's an idea that you could consider, was to have the Palestinian Authority, which which operates in the West Bank, also run Gaza. And it said that is not desirable for Israel because the status quo of Hamas in Gaza and the PA in the West Bank keeps Palestinians divided, which is then an obstacle to Palestinian statehood. And so it's described, the obstacle is described in the document as a good thing for Israel. Like they want the division. And that is reflective of this longtime kind of Netanyahu policy that Hamas is, actually good for the interests of Israel because Hamas is not a negotiating partner that can be taken seriously.
Discredits the Palestinian cause. And
implicitly in that, there's going to be some Israeli civilian casualties from Hamas rockets and Hamas border raids, but that's the price of making sure that there's no Palestinian statehood. October 7th put a price tag on that far beyond what Netanyahu could have expected. To see a document post October 7th still say that the status quo of a divided Gaza and West Bank is preferable because it prevents Palestinian statehood is just chilling, because it desecrates the memory of all of the Israeli civilians who were killed as a consequence of that strategy. And so that also raises the question of what is going on in the West Bank. That's what we're going to talk about here. If we can put up this first element. So this is Palestinian Authority-run West Bank. Settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank is rising. Now, over the past year, violence in the West Bank from settlers and from the IDF toward Palestinians was already at kind of record levels over the years. We've seen pogroms directed at Palestinians that have been kind of ramped up to a completely new level. And again, this is not Hamas. This is the Palestinian Authority, which Palestinians see as an arm of the Israeli occupation. Like post-Arafat, who there's an interesting documentary on how he was killed that alleges that Israel poisoned Arafat. Post-Arafat, the Palestinian Authority is seen by a lot of Palestinians as just kind of another, just a wing, just an arm of the Israeli occupation. Yet, this is what we're getting in the West Bank.
Well, and I think that's actually an important point of context. Before October 7th, violence and casualties were already basically coming close to record levels over the past couple of decades, both for Israelis and Palestinians. And so tensions, it did come out of, it felt like it came out of the blue. It did not actually really come out of the blue. There was a lot of, there was an incredible amount of tension. And that's another reason that, instead of, and we were just talking about this in the last segment, instead of the paragliders and whatever else, what Hamas did, and to your point, it's likely that Netanyahu knows this, and people in Israel know this. What they did was set back the cause of Palestinians, and so instead of the paragliders and saying that this is the cost of decolonization, et cetera, that's a completely misplaced celebration of what has it been called, the decolonization effort, the retaliation, et cetera, et cetera. That set back the Palestinian cause enormously, and Israel knows that. Many Palestinians know that. And so again, that's just another example of how poorly served so many civilians are by world leadership, their own leadership in that area.
Yeah, and it feels like the settlers and the IDF in the West Bank are using the focus on the war in Gaza to kind of ramp up the policy that was already being implemented. You can put up C2 here. This is from Haaretz. So the U.S. threatens to stop supplying guns after Ben-Gvir gives them out at political events. Ben-Gvir, ultra far right. Like there isn't enough kind of adjectives to describe how far right this Netanyahu minister is.
And he wouldn't rebuke them.
No, he'd say add some more onto it.
Right.
And he's handing out weapons to Israeli settlers who can then kind of use them in the pogroms and the clearing out of of these territories. I think we're decided we're not going to play it. People can find it on their own. There is extremely disturbing Abu Ghraib-like footage circulating online of Palestinian civilians in the West Bank being kind of beaten, held naked, dragged across hard scrabble dirt ground, just abused in some of the most horrific ways you can imagine. And again, West Bank. This is happening in the West Bank. This is not happening in Hamas-controlled Gaza. I think we have C3 here, Jewish Voices for Peace, saying the footage of Israeli soldiers torturing Palestinian men in the West Bank is horrific. The Israeli military has brutally abused Palestinian prisoners for decades. As the Israeli military wages a genocidal war in Gaza, its soldiers are no longer hiding this abuse from the public. And part and parcel of this entire strategy is also humiliation. And that gets us to the TikTok trend that we're talking about here. There's a song, it has a name, I don't know the name of the song, but it's a typical TikTok trend where people are doing basically the same thing to a little dance, to the same song, and everybody's participating across society, except this one is people who have captured, young Palestinians and blindfolded them and handcuffed them and then humiliating them with this dance being done at kind of weddings, Israeli children are doing it. We can play a couple of the clips here.
So if you were listening to that, what you saw was a couple of videos, or what you would have seen if you were watching is a couple of videos of Israelis driving cars. The first video had what appeared to be a group of Palestinian hostages in the back of the car, and the driver was sort of laughing along to the meme. And then in the second video, again, Israeli driving a car and a group of kids.
A prominent journalist, I believe.
A prominent, so a group of kids sort of mock having their hands tied together, having their hands cuffed, kind of bopping along to the song and smiling in the background.
Yeah. And Palestinians and Israelis have to live together in this part of the world. Like, they have all decided that this is where they're going to live. And it just seems like there's just no recognition of that fact. That I feel like there can be if there's just enough walls built, enough fences, enough attacking back and forth, that somehow that will resolve itself. But that's not the case.
It's just enormously difficult to imagine. The effort that it takes to resist that sort of the negative human impulses when you've seen, and just given the numbers, basically everyone in Israel knows somebody who was killed and slaughtered by terrorists in the massacre. And the worst human impulses bring us to positions like those, bring us to sort of laughing and smiling about the mistreatment of other people, of civilians. And we saw that, again, you keep going to Iraq and Afghanistan, and you invoked Abu Ghraib. We have seen that impulse take us. And I do think over Hamas, we have the moral high ground. That is not helpful. That is allowing us to forfeit the moral high ground in ways, and I'm sort of conflating the U.S. and Israel, and appropriately so, and the broader West, but that's giving in to the very, very worst of us.
And
it's not easy.
And a lot of this is going on post October 7th in the West Bank, but these types of humiliations are endemic to the occupation, and so that's also why it's an interesting question of what would the Gazans even say if you said, okay, the Palestinian Authority is going to be administering Gaza at this point. Like, well, the Palestinian Authority administers the West Bank, and it's brutal. Like, why would we want that?
And there's generations of anti-Semitism in, there's just such a deep-seated and endemic hatred, we would be foolish to ignore in Gaza, in the West Bank, but there's also, we can't ignore it when you see videos like this either. Absolutely not. And what we can do is not have John Kirby say, well, we want to be able to have Palestinians come back. Like, we want them to leave and be confident that they'll be able to come back, when the plan is to have, again, people living in extremely close proximity. There is no end to the October 7th cycle and the post-October 7th cycle. There's just going to be a whole lot of civilians caught in a rinse and repeat.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.